Hi, how's it going? So there's this cool little transit.
You're not even in the light. Just give it here. I'll explain.
Okay. Thank you. Let me just put the camera down.
So yeah, as he was saying, yeah, really simple little trick you can do with just your camera and some video editing software. There's no need for After Effects or any sort of special effects software. So let's jump into Premiere Pro and I'll show you how it's done. Okay, so we've got 3 main clips that I filmed. There is one clip here, but it's a little bit of audio that I recorded, and we will come to that later on. So with this sort of transition, you don't really have to use it in a specific sort of setting. It could be within a vlog, or it could be like as part of a B-roll sequence or anything like that. The only thing is you have to kind of plan ahead and know exactly when you're going to be using this transition, because it involves a little bit of filming or a little camera technique. So this shot starts with me stood up with the camera in my hand, and it finishes with this little pan of the camera, which you can see.
Okay.
So that camera movement is crucial. So what I did for the second clip is try to mimic that exact same camera movement. So I start the clip by facing the camera in roughly the same direction. So you can see I've got the blind there, and in this angle the blind is there, so it's roughly the same direction. It doesn't have to be exactly framed or anything like that. And I begin this clip with that exact same camera movement in exactly the same direction, and I tried to get the speed near enough. Again, it doesn't have to be exact, so it's pretty much you're holding the camera like this, and it's a flick of the wrist like that. So we could start filming and then a flick of the wrist like that. So the idea is you're trying to mimic that exact camera movement, because what we're going to do now is find that section where the camera's moving. So we go frame by frame, you can see you get this kind of motion blur. So I filmed this at 25 frames, which I would recommend because you get this kind of natural motion blur. The footage isn't too smooth because it becomes a little bit more obvious if your footage is really smooth. So this is a good point for me. So within this movement, just try and find a specific point that you'll be able to kind of look out for in both clips. So I like this shot here. It's got this light stand and a bit of the light at the top. So what I'm going to do is just put a little cut here. So I've split these 2 clips, and you can actually get rid of this second part. So you've got up to halfway through this camera movement on this clip. And on the next one, you're going to do exactly the same, but kind of in reverse. So let's find that camera movement. There we go. Excuse my derpy face. So we're looking for that light stand. So that's basically the light stand there. So it's not exact, like I said, it doesn't have to be exact. We haven't got the top of the light there, but we've got this light stand. So we know the camera is roughly facing the same direction. So again, we're going to put a little split in this clip and then delete everything before it. And then all you have to do is drag the 2 clips together, and you end up with this.
Transit. Okay. Thank you.
Very smooth. So in this case, I haven't actually had to do anything to this. In some cases, when it doesn't look quite as smooth, I recommend just putting a simple cross dissolve, a very short one, but it just smoothens out that cut.
Thank you.
But I was pretty pleased with that. So that's the idea, that's the transition. So all you have to do is just, on the clip before, pan the camera away from yourself or away from the subject, and then on the next clip do the exact same sort of camera movement, same direction, because obviously you don't want to film in 2 different directions because it will just look very obviously cut. So as the clip goes on, I put the camera down. So this is another important part. So that was the transition here. The next part of the video was 2 of myself in the same shot. So the idea of that is using masking. Most video softwares, I presume, will have some sort of masking feature. If not, then this part will be quite difficult. I've got a fixed shot, almost on a tripod, but I've actually just put the camera on top of a speaker, but as long as the camera doesn't move. So I filmed this first section imagining myself sat in the other chair. A little bit awkward, but... So yeah, as he was saying... Yeah, pretending there was like an annoying version of me just playing a game on his phone. So I kind of have to imagine that footage in there at the moment. But later on in this clip, I moved from this chair into that chair. And I selected the focus to be the right side of the screen. So the focus isn't exactly how I wanted it to be, but again, it doesn't have to be perfect. So I've got this angle with me sat on the chair, and then this is later on in the same clip. I just moved to the other chair and sat down. Kind of imagined what I'd said in the previous clip. I basically just looked at myself. All I had to do was stop playing the game, put the phone away. So you can see the focus on this side of the screen. It does change slightly because it was focused on me here. I was a little bit closer to the camera, and then when I moved away, it focused on the chair. Again, it doesn't matter too much. So in this case, I found it easier to have the original clip on top. So we select those two, move it up, and then we just drag this one across. So we've got to try and find the right place based on the audio or the kind of dreadful acting. So I know this is where I paused. If you look at this audio clip, this is where I paused, and this is where I feel like the game should start, or the noise from the game. So this is roughly it. So at the moment, you obviously can't see this version of me. So yeah, as he was saying, yeah, really simple little... I'm just gonna move that back a little bit. So the idea with this is using masks, or masking. So you've got the original clip on top at the moment. If I reduce the opacity, then you can see the other one. So you can see the positioning for now. We just pop this back to 100. And all we're gonna do is add a simple mask. So if we go to opacity here, I'm gonna use the square or the 4-point polygon mask. By default, it will just give you a rectangle or a 4-sided shape. All you have to do is drag these points out. Until you can see both of us in the shot. If you want to give it a little bit of extra kind of smoothing, you can go to the mask feathering. I think I added like 30 or so, just to make sure, because we do have that slight change in focus, so that will kind of cover up that a little bit more. So then obviously once we come off that, you have two versions of me in the same shot. So yeah, as you were saying, yeah, really simple little trick you can do. So with the finished version of this little sequence, it did actually get a little bit more complicated than I was originally planning. So obviously I've got the camera in my hand and then I cover the lens. So the idea was I was going to cover the lens and then remove my hand, then revealing the two of us.
Camera down.
So but the problem here was, if you look closely, just go back a little bit. As I was holding the camera, I left a little gap here. So for a split second, it might just be me being a little bit of a perfectionist about it, but you could see that there was no one sat on the chair, just for like a split second. So what I ended up having to do is, instead of just doing a simple mask, the mask ended up looking like this, and then the mask had to be tracked as my hand came away from the camera. Same sort of principle, but you've just got a bit more of a complex masking situation, and I've had to use the keyframes on this side here. So if you turn the keyframes on, every time you move along and make a change to the mask, it will remember it. And there was even something else very subtle that I had to do. So if you look carefully at the top of the screen here, in between these sort of 3 or 4 frames, as I move my hand away from the camera, I actually move the camera a little bit as well. If you just look at this section here, you can actually see the camera moves ever so slightly. Again, it's very, very subtle, but what I had to do is try and match that movement with the clip below. So again, I'm using keyframes, but instead of a mask, I'm using the position. So literally just to make that movement more realistic. This here is the clip underneath. As the camera moves here, this is the real camera movement, I've had to move this clip over. So then you get this tiny little movement as the camera moves, as I let go of the lens. So it ends up just looking a lot more smooth. So I was actually quite pleased with how that turned out in the end.
Okay.
So we've got that transition, put the camera down, accidentally knock it,
Yeah, as you were saying.
and then I've got the mask, revealing the 2 versions of myself.
Just your camera and some video editing software. There's no need for After Effects.
So there is this final clip here, and I only intended on using the audio from it, but I wanted to film a video to make it sound as realistic as possible. So I held the camera in exactly the same position as it was right at the beginning of the video, and I spoke from sitting down on the chair. So it would actually sound like I'm speaking in the background. So this is the audio.
Whoa. You're not even in the light. Just give it here, I'll explain.
So that's the bit of audio that I wanted to use to kind of get myself to give the other version of me the camera. I took this clip, unlinked it, and just used this piece of audio and inserted it here in this gap. So again, when I first recorded this clip, I had to leave a gap and sort of imagine myself saying this. So this is the clip here.
You're not even in the light. Just give it here, I'll explain. Okay.
Just trying to make it sound as natural as possible. So I kind of interrupt myself with the audio.
There's this cool little transition. Whoa. You're not even in the light. Just give it here, I'll explain. Okay.
So I did record this audio a couple of times, different lengths and stuff, just to make sure there would be a suitable sample of audio to insert into that little gap there. Okay, so I hope that made sense. I know there was a few little extra bits in there, but the main idea was that sort of camera movement transition. That one's the really easy one to do. When you have to start using the masking, it kind of gets a little bit more complicated, but I just thought I'd throw that in there anyway, in case anyone wanted to know. If you did enjoy the video, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. That would be awesome. And don't forget to give the video a like and drop a comment down below if you have any suggestions for other videos. And I'll see you in the next one.